You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com.
I don't have aspirations to be that huge person. If I can help people along the way and learn how to teach them how to do it, provide a good life for my family, and enjoy the time I have here on earth, then I'm good with that. I'm not doing this to add stress to my life. I'm doing this to be a better dad, be a better husband, be a better person for my community. So it guides everything I do in my life. Just knowing why you're doing what you're doing has been just so huge for me. Because that can keep you motivated too. Because we all know things are going to happen, things are going to break, things are going to go bad, contracts are going to go bad. But if you know why you're doing it, it just makes the whole process a whole lot easier.
This episode is brought to you by PropStream.com.
PropStream is one of the most trusted real estate data software solutions. PropStream benefits all real estate professionals. You can find properties and contact homeowners on the go with PropStream's mobile app. We offer free academy courses tailored to real estate investors and agents. Take advantage of our live webinar demos to learn the software and scale your real estate business. Visit www.propstream.com and sign up for your 7-day free trial to get more leads and grow your business.
Welcome to REIA Radio with Grant Francke. It's the funnest name to say.
It is. It has a ring to it.
Sometimes just saying Frankie. I don't even want to call you Grant. I just want to call you Frankie.
That's fine too. I've been called worse, so that works.
I get it.
Do you have that as a nickname? Do people just call you Frankie?
Yeah, it's my last name, so everybody sticks with Frankie.
That
usually.
works.
Yep.
Grant, have you ever been involved in a train derailment?
A small one. Yes, I have. Very small.
What happened?
The rail broke underneath the rail car. So it derailed about 5 or 6 cars.
How fast was it going?
We were only going 10 miles an hour. So it was
okay.
pretty slow motion thing. I've seen some big ones. I've come across big ones, but I've never been involved in a huge one.
Now, Grant, you spent how many years as a W-2 train conductor?
Yeah, so I hired out in 2006, pretty much right out of high school, and I went till 2019, so about 13 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And you tell us how that happened originally.
Yeah, so my dad worked for the railroad for 42 years on the maintenance side. I didn't know what I wanted to do out of high school. I was kind of I'll go to school to be a teacher. So I went to a semester and a half at SEC, and then I quickly realized that was not going to be what I wanted to do. So he's like, hey, just come hire out the railroad, and you can give that a shot and see what it's like. So I started out just as a 19-year-old, hired out as a conductor, and it's a great job if you don't have any family or any kids.
Because you're on the road all the time.
Yeah, you're on the road, or you're working
on the
midnights.
tracks.
Yeah, you're working midnights. You're in a hotel. It's just it's a rough life.
You can't drink old fashions at 10 a.m. being a teacher or being on a railroad.
No, you can't. Well, you can, but you get fired pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You can do anything once.
Yeah.
Okay, so Grant, what I picture as the duties of a train conductor, I only have a reference of Looney Tunes from when I was a kid in my head, where you're shoveling coal in the whole time.
Right.
Because it's a steam engine.
Yes.
Or a coal, whatever. Yeah, no, that's not right. You get the point.
Yeah.
What do you actually do on a day-to-day basis? Are you just chilling? There's a break and that's your job? Or
no,
I know it's more complicated than that, but what do you do?
Yeah, for on the road as a conductor, there's an engineer up there, and
we took pictures. My daughter and I took pictures with trains yesterday.
Oh, nice. At the UP place, yeah.
Anyway, so we interrupt this regularly scheduled question with a random Ted butt in.
So on the road, there's 2 people up in the cab. You have the engineer, that's who's driving the train. The conductor knows what's on the train and is supposed to know how fast we can go through all the different spots. So it's the most thing I can correlate it to is a pilot and a co-pilot on a plane. So,
okay.
But the co-pilot's the conductor that's helping out with and then if there's any issues with the train, then we have to get off the train and go back and try to fix it, or fix things with the cars, or we contact the dispatcher, that sort of stuff. So he's running the train, and the other guy's just doing everything else for it.
Do you ever ride, now that you're not doing that anymore, do you ever just go and ride Amtrak just for fun?
No, I will never do that. No. Really? I know how terrible it is and how bad things can go really quickly. I'll never take Amtrak. Really? It's great. I just won't do it. It's not good.
That's on my bucket list, to take a train across the country.
And do it once, maybe, I guess. Yeah, I've just done so many of it. I just don't really care to. I'd rather drive.
I took Amtrak to Chicago when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I think I was like 10 or 12, and I just thought that was just the best. It was so different than anything I'd ever done. You know, like it was. I thought it was fun, but I mean, granted, I only did it one time.
Yeah.
My grandma was all about like creating experiences. 'Cause my mom had me when she was 16, so she was super young. So grandma always tried to have something different to do all the time. She was like first person to take me on a plane, first person to take me out of the country, but she also took me on a train, and it was like one of those dinner rides.
Oh yeah.
And I think we left out of
yeah.
Fremont.
Yeah.
And I just remember that being one of the most memorable experiences of my life.
that's
to this
cool.
day.
That's cool.
Yeah, I my sister-in-law, she's lived everywhere, like Indonesia. Like she has pictures with Mother Teresa. She's lived on a cruise ship for 4 years. Basically, her entire life has been, I will work just enough to where I can afford to travel as much as I want to, and she wants to a lot.
Yeah.
So she's going on a world cruise in January this year. Literally, I don't know how many countries. It's a lot. It's like 20 plus countries. But she's going literally around the world on a cruise ship. That's crazy. It's like 144-day something.
Wow.
But the reason I bring that up is because she just got back from Alaska, where she spent all summer plus basically working on a train. So she was bartending on a train in Anchorage to, I don't know where, Juneau?
Okay.
Those are the only two cities
Yeah.
I know in Alaska. But I mean, she went back and forth, and she was telling me about how like they have 20 hours of daylight, right? And she was living there during that. She's like, that was awesome. And then all of a sudden it just turned like that because they have like 2 months of decent weather there, and then it's like winter all year. You were in the Pacific Northwest, if I recall correctly, for a while. Like, did you do a stint up there for work?
Nope. I've always just been in Lincoln, just based out of Lincoln.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you travel to? Like, what was your route?
Yeah, Lincoln. They go to a couple different places: Kansas City, McCook, Sioux City, Ravenna, kind of out that Grand Island area.
Okay.
And those are the spots that we
I don't
go.
know where I got Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, no.
You got bad
Not
show
me.
notes, obviously.
I do. So how did real estate enter your life?
Yeah, so it really came down to like I said, the hours and stuff at the railroad. We had our kids. My wife and I were talking. I was like, "There's got to be a better way for me to live my life." I was missing Christmases, I was missing birthdays, gatherings, 4th of Julys, and I was like, I just can't. I only live this life once, so I've got to find something else. So I was looking at everything. I was like, I could work for the post office. I could do whatever to get me out of the railroad. I've always been somewhat handy, like just enough to be dangerous. So I was Googling around. I could be like a GC or a handyman. Came across a Bigger Pockets episode that a handyman became a landlord after being a handyman, and he recommended a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Read that book, and then it was just kind of all downhill from there.
Was there something in that book that really ignited you, like specifically?
Yeah, I mean, just the thought of money, like how you think of being an employee, how you think of money. Like I've never really read a book that I thought was like written for me, but I read that and it was just like, holy crap, there's a whole nother world out there besides just being an employee for a company the rest of your life.
I remember telling my wife, I was like, because she's a school teacher, I'm like, they need to teach us, because I always thought of it as a book of educating you on money, not necessarily real estate. And
Mindset of money basically is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, they need to educate. And I remember I gave that book to my little brother when he was like 12. He probably didn't read it till like 17 or 18, but I'll give him props, Johnny, because at 21 you bought your first house and started your first business.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so once I read that, like it was just, I felt like I was like a disciple. I was telling everybody, have you heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad? Have you heard of this page? Like it just took over my life. It changed everything.
Who's the person that put it in your hands? Do you remember?
What's that?
Who's the person that gave it to you, or did you go buy it yourself?
I went and bought it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I listened to that podcast, and I just drove to Barnes & Noble and bought it. Like, I didn't even want to wait for Amazon, so I just drove and bought it and read it. And same thing, I gave it to my wife. I was like, hey, I've got an idea. Read this book, and then we'll chat about what we could do. And she read it and was fully on board, too.
What about you, Owen?
I remember I picked that book up when I had a brief stint as a financial planner, and I did that for probably a year and a half. And I used to, call on people and walk them through the whole process of, like how comfortable are you with risk? Like what's your financial picture look like now? What are your goals? And then you put together basically a plan to get there. And somehow or another, I had come across the Rich Dad Poor Dad book because I was reading a whole bunch of personal finance stuff. And then I found a book called Nothing Down, and that was, Multiple Streams of Income, and it was written by Robert Allen. And that was about just basically buying businesses and assets that produce cash flow, and then you can use that basically to exceed your, monthly income and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, that was really interesting, because most of the stuff I had read before that was like stocks, mutual funds, like, savings, insurance, like everything kind of in your financial picture outside of real estate. And then I found that, and I was like, what? Because I thought real estate always was for rich people. Like, I was like, I would be almost embarrassed because my poor spending habits were leading me to, like, I was like, people would be like, why don't, you don't have a house yet? Or my friends were buying houses, and I was like, I don't know if I want to live around here, which was kind of true, but that was a total excuse.
Complete millennial thing.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember I got that book, and I'm only bringing this up because I actually used to gift that book to clients. So I would meet with people, and if they decided to, invest some money through me, then I would give them a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I would write, like, good luck on taking your first step to financial freedom, blah, blah, blah. And I would write that in the cover and give it to them. So I bought like 100 of those.
I remember when I was getting into being an insurance agent for American Family, the partner down there, which was Jay Morales, gave me that book for the first time, and I think I was 26.
Yeah.
And he's like, gotta read this. And he probably sat there for a little bit, and then I read it within about 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I think the Cash Flow Quadrant that was kind of the follow-up book to it, and that really, really illuminated a lot more detail, because Rich Dad Poor Dad, let's face it, is not a real tactical book.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's more like inspirational, like I don't know, like a big picture type of thing.
But but it's written like a story.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think that makes it a lot easier to digest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I love business books that have a story behind it.
It makes it's not just so much numbers and like facts, where it's like kind of inspires you a little bit.
Yeah, or like it's like Never Split the Difference. Mm-hmm. They have those stories. Or Jocko's book, his first one, the big one that he wrote, Jocko Willing.
Extreme Leadership?
Yeah, Extreme Leadership. Yeah. And then he gave stories of being how war, and how he compared it to the business room that he was working in. Yeah. I find those a lot easier to read and a lot more enjoyable to read too.
The ones that have pictures are the ones Ted really likes.
I don't like graphs.
But now, okay, so you found the book. You said, this is life altering or mindset altering.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Yeah, so my wife and I, we just kind of said, all right, let's just try this. We're going to give it a shot, see what happens. Did the regular thing, got an agent, and went out and just kind of started looking for our first deal, and it ended up being a duplex in Lincoln that we got.
Now, Rich Dad Poor Dad, if I recall, he gave kind of like, he introduced the concepts of buying cash flowing assets that produce income, obviously, as an alternative to working for a W-2 employer for the rest of your life. Going to college, his poor dad was the go to school, get good grades, get a good job, get a pension, and then work for the man for 65 years or whatever.
And he was 65. He was a school teacher, right?
Yep. And but yeah, the Rich Dad Poor Dad book was more like, hey, buy assets that spin off cash flow, and you don't have to do that path. Why did you pick real estate out of that? Because he delved a lot into business and like different aspects of producing that. Was that the kind of low-hanging fruit there?
Yeah, it just seemed the most tangible to me, the most accessible. There was the most amount of education available for that. Bigger Pockets was kind of in its heyday at that time, so there was just a ton of information, a ton of books you could read, and it seemed like the lowest barrier of entry for me. Like I don't have a college degree. I'm not a business person per se, or I wasn't then. So it seemed like the easiest way for me to get scalable cash flow to leave that W-2 job was real estate, is what it ended up being.
How did you determine what your number was, like your freedom number, as that gets thrown around?
Yeah, so my wife is an accountant, so she's like an Excel master.
That's like cheating.
Yeah, it's so phenomenal.
That's not fair.
Yeah. So so after the first couple, she built a spreadsheet that kind of took into effect like the cash flow I get off of rentals, then the tax benefits we would get from that would take off of her W-2 job, her taxes from that. So we ended up with that number. It ended up being like $3,500 a month for me to leave my railroad job and replace that income. The other thing we did was, when we were getting prepared for that, so since it is a union job, you can bid around to like the different jobs. So I bid to the lowest paying job that I could and worked there for like a year. It was like, if we can survive on this number while I'm working my W-2, then this is the number we need to replace. So we kind of lowered our life spending and all that stuff. We kind of lowered the bar before I left. So I didn't want to, stay at the highest paying job and be like, oh, I got to get to this, and then that's less attainable. So we went to the lowest paying job, got that number, and then after we hit that number, I left.
What was the lowest paying job?
It's called a hostler. So you work so you don't travel. You're at home all the time, but you just put locomotives on the trains before they leave. So like there's people gassing up the locomotives, so you take the locomotive and you put it on the train before they leave.
Huh. Okay. Have you ever done that job?
Before?
Yeah.
Well, no, not really. Hadn't ever really done it before. I just went to it at the end.
Interesting.
It's a
Okay,
very
so
low-key job.
this is a good thought experiment, though, because you were making a plan. Sounds like your wife is. Now, how would you contrast or compare your like outlook on things with regard to your wife? Are you guys fairly similar in how you look at opportunities and challenges and bookkeeping and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. And I would say she's the reason that I've gotten where I am. Like she's been so supportive and encouraging for me. Like I can self-sabotage pretty easily, and so she's always been there. And even in the beginning, like just in starting, she was so supportive and helping me do that. So I wouldn't be where I am without my wife, supporting me in there. And she still is to this day. Even at looking different ventures we're doing, we sit down and talk about it, and she's always got good ideas and is super encouraging about it.
Does she work full-time in the business too?
Well, not in my business. So she still has her W-2 job. She'll help out with some financial stuff, but we're starting to offload a lot of that now.
Cool. Okay, so what happened next with you guys? So you said you got the purple Bible in your hand, pounded that thing, and said, "Give me more. I want to do this." And you said, "What's the least possible paying job at my current employer?" And that's basically where I'm going to arrive at from a spending perspective. Was kind of you guys were like, "Hey, I know I can get this low-paying job if I had to," and you looked at the benefit package too. Is that kind of why you did it that way?
Yeah. So the benefit package with her insurance, and then like taking the taxes off of her income with the depreciation and all that stuff. Because I'd be a full-time real estate investor when I leave, so we were able to offset her taxes. So we just went down that route. Bought a duplex, and then just kind of slowly started scaling after that.
Now, did you save up money and buy that, or what was your financial position at the time when you bought your first one?
Yeah, we did have capital saved up just because we were both working W-2 jobs.
Yep.
And then when we started scaling, like I knew that real estate was going to be the ticket and the key. So we did a 401k loan out of my 401k at the railroad, and started buying with that. And then, after I left the road, we ended up just cashing that thing out and just putting it all in real estate because we knew that's where we wanted to be at.
What kind of tax hit did you take on that?
Yeah, it was fun, but I had enough to appreciate because I was able to like the year that I cashed that out, I was buying enough that it would kind of offset enough, but it wasn't. I mean, obviously I paid taxes, but it was offset by the depreciation.
I didn't have a huge one, but I did the same thing for my very first flip I did.
Yeah.
Cashed in the 401k, and then my wife's like, "You know what kind of taxes we're going to pay?" And I'm like, "We're out of write-offs with this. We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Plus, it doesn't matter. We're moving on." And it was a small amount. It was like $40,000. And I remember us meeting like 3 years ago. And she's like, wanted to know about, that money. And I was like, well, we were able to take that $40,000 and make that into $250,000 every year.
Yeah.
And thereafter, like, come on.
Yeah.
I'm glad we were talking about this because I heard you mention that when you were on, and by the way, we'll dig into this, but you were on Bigger Pockets on the podcast, the OG real estate podcast.
You were like one of the last episodes
before things went crazy.
Yeah.
If not the last.
I think so. Yeah, I was with Henry before they made the big switch.
Yeah, you were like the transition episode.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. So you were talking about that, and I just.
Owen's jealous by the way because he can never get on Bigger Pockets.
I gave up.
So I'll help you out.
I thought it was really interesting that you brought up the 401k aspect of it. You did a loan at first, so that was and if memory serves here, I have done this myself, and it's been a long time, but $50,000 was I believe at the time the limit.
Yeah.
You could borrow that from your employer, and typically the interest rate wasn't bad. It was comparable to whatever the market rate was. You can use that money tax-free. You do have to pay it back, right? So if you want to maybe kind of like
walk through.
Do you remember how the mechanics of that work? Because I think this is really interesting. We haven't talked about this much in any other episodes. So
and most people don't even know it exists, but it's like a super powerful way because you're going to borrow against your 401k. So let's say you have $100,000 of your 401k. You can borrow $50,000 of that. So they pull that $50,000 out. That's not affected by the market anymore. It's not a marketable asset. And then you're going to pay that money back through your paycheck like just like your regular contributions are every month. So plus the interest. Your account, your 401k is still going to grow as you pay that money back, and you're using that money to buy. I was using it to buy cash flowing assets on top of that. And then that cash flow was not captured within the 401k. That was our personal cash flow. So it's just a super powerful thing that I don't think most people know a lot about it.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it's not taxable. You're putting pre-tax dollars into a 401k account that is growing exponentially more quickly than already tax dollars.
Yep.
So it's the difference between a 401k and a Roth IRA, basically, is like you're putting in post-tax dollars versus pre-tax. The pre-tax dollars, there's obviously more of them because they're not taxed yet. So that money is then growing over time. You could borrow that money up to a certain amount and use that either as a down payment or to buy something for cash. Granted, this has got to be a cheap property nowadays, but now you do have to pay that back. So how did you approach that part of it? So you borrowed the money from the 401k. Then what happened next with your purchase?
Yeah, so we would just realize the cash flow that we'd have from the property and then match that up with what my reoccurring payment would be, because you could spread that out over how many years you want to do it. So we were able to make it so like the cash flow from the duplex that we bought was equal to my payment on that. So we weren't out any money. We were growing an asset and paying back my 401k at the same time.
Did everything go smoothly with your first deal?
No.
Like, what?
So serious
funny.
there.
For anybody not watching video here, he just gave me the look like, you son of a bitch. You know it didn't go well.
That's
what happened?
Well, that's probably like my failing forward thing. You know what I mean? Like it's
Well, then let's get into today's Failing Forward. And this Failing Forward is brought to you by JM Real Estate Capital.
Hi, it's Rob, JM Real Estate Capital. We're the money guys that you need to know for all your real estate investments. Talk to us. We can do what your local bank can't or won't do. We don't have millions. We have trillions with a T to lend. 844-we close, or go online at jmrecapital.com. That's jmrecapital.com. JM Real Estate Capital, smart solutions for the real estate investor.
So, I mean, it wasn't a terrible deal. Like I always, and even now when I'm talking to investors, I'm like, just get the first one done. Like, don't lose a ton of money on it. Just get it done and get those, just get it done.
Damage control.
Damage control.
It's your first asset.
Yeah,
There's going to be wreckage.
It's going to be bad, you know. And looking back, hindsight, like for me, that's like 1% of my real estate journey was that first deal. Just getting the deal done, though, helped me make
big momentum shift.
Yeah, big momentum shift for me. So it was just an up-down duplex in Lincoln. I bought it. The guy had just renovated it, and then like we got people in there, and there's a toilet was leaking through the ceiling of the one upstairs to the downstairs one. I couldn't get it rented out for what I thought it would be. I was just typical new investor stuff. And then I only owned it for like 4 months. So I bought it and I sold it pretty quickly. So we talked earlier.
You sold it. Yeah.
Sold it. Yeah. So we talked earlier about transactional real estate. I didn't really bring that one up, but so I bought that, and then we had that duplex. I found another duplex on Craigslist back when that was a thing that you could find real estate on Craigslist. Bought that duplex from that guy, and then he offered to sell or finance me 5 houses of his on that. So I was like, perfect. I'm gonna get rid of this headache and buy those 5 single-family houses, which was great. I took a tax hit because I made like a little bit of money off of it, but it wasn't the smoothest one. It's not like it's my darling property that everybody's like, oh, this is my first rental property. I don't even want to drive down that street just because it caused me so much stress. You know what I mean? So,
I do know what you mean.
yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I drive by those and I'm like, oh my gosh. I think more of the reason why I had to sell them than the rehab, though.
Yeah.
You know what's weird, man? I'm at a stage now where I've been doing this, long enough, about 20 years.
You have a house on every street that you've owned at one point?
Well, I did have a goal at one time. I wanted a real life monopoly, so I would own 3 properties on the same street or whatever. I look back now and they say, most people always talk about my only regret is not buying more, not buying earlier. And I don't regret selling the ones that I sold, because people talk about that too. They're like, oh, I wish I would have kept everything. And I'm like, I do not, because the ones I've sold, typically there's a really good reason for it, and it's the 80-20 rule. They cause 80% of the headaches over the rest of the portfolio, and I'm like, I am fine getting rid of those. Some properties just are magnets for drama. I don't know why that is.
I've got 3 duplexes I sold in Beatrice that were
Beet rice?
Beet rice, yeah. And it was these things cash flowed like crazy, but the headache that I got off of them was like, it's not even worth it. I'm going to sell them. And I just put that money in something else that makes a little bit less money, but I don't have the headache that they caused.
This is kind of interesting that I did want to bring this up because, so Beatrice, Nebraska, this is what I'm hoping to do with this part of the show here is illustrate how there's just some pockets of communities or locations that don't work out well or don't work out as planned. Why do you think that is? With, in particular, that town, for example, and we can use this as like a microcosm of the whole real estate universe.
Yeah. I won't say anything bad about Beatrice because I still have 30-some units there, and it's like that's where I got a vast majority of my cash flow for me to leave my job. There's good rental spots in small towns, and we can do Beatrice as well. There's one part of town in Beatrice I won't buy in, and then there's another part of town in Beatrice that I did buy in. For me now, like where I'm at, I'm trying to like shrink my footprint, so I'm kind of selling off my Beatrice stuff to get everything back into Lincoln just for management reasons. But I can't say anything bad about Beatrice because it's been. I know there's especially locally, there's a connotation about Beatrice that it's not the greatest town to invest in, but it's served me very well.
Is it a cash flow monster, but not as much appreciation?
Not as much appreciation.
Yeah.
I just sold some duplexes that I bought in the beginning. I bought them for like $92, and I just sold them for $199. But everything's appreciated like crazy the last 5 years.
You also probably did quite a bit of work to get there, right?
Yeah, some of them went up quite a bit with just like sweat labor and all that stuff. But and raising rents was a huge thing. But that's a cash flow town. Like there's different towns you're going to cash flow in. There's different towns you're just going to appreciate in. There's some of those combo ones that you can get both in. Those smaller towns are going to be cash flow towns. It's not something you're going to want to stick money in for 30 years and I'll just sell this thing for $1 million in 30 years. That's probably not a realistic thing. But for me, I was chasing cash flow and the most amount of cash flow I could get. So I went to Beatrice because I lived down that area. So I went there and I was like, this is, it works out well. And I saw the way other people were doing it in Beatrice. I'm like, there's no way that I can't do it better than all these 70-year-old farmers that have a duplex. You know what I mean? So I just knew that I could do it better than them.
Before we hit record today, you and I were talking a little bit about the environment that we have been in for the last, say, 3-4 years with interest rates really climbing fast, like unprecedented pace, which has resulted in somewhat of a stagnant real estate market. And at any given snapshot in time in the real estate asset class in general, there are always really, really good times, and there's times that are kind of like meh, and then there's other times that are like, ew, yeah, it's really hard to operate.
Yep.
How would you describe from when you first started getting into real estate investing and buying rental properties? What's different and what's the same or kind of similar to now versus when you got started?
Yeah, so I started in 2016, and that was, when I started buying in 2016, people were like, well, that's the ride's over. We're too far from 2008. This is all going to come crashing down again. Then they say that again in 2019, and then COVID happened, and everyone's like, well, it's going to crash now. Like, how many times are we going to say it's going to crash before we just realize that those don't happen that often? You know what I mean? Yep. So as far as market-wise, I see like right now as probably we're getting closer to that 2016 timeframe where I feel like it's a really good time to kind of as interest rates are coming down, people have loans coming due, property values are kind of coming down a little bit. I feel like we're in a really good spot right now, personally. The last 2 years have been, it's just kind of been boring. There's not a whole lot of deals moving around. I didn't want to pay 8% interest for a 6 cap or a 5 cap, so it's pretty easy to say no to those and just kind of sit on your thumbs and wait. But I think right now, I feel like right now is around that 2016 timeframe for me again, where I feel like there's momentum for the real estate market again. And I don't think inflation's really probably going anywhere. I know they say it's done, but I think it's going to come back if we get interest rates back down.
It's a tricky balancing act right now too, especially with the, war in Israel and Iran now that we're probably going to get drug into at some point or in some way, and we've got Ukraine involvement by proxy that we are like it's so hard to kind of gauge how the political rhetoric and military involvement overseas is going to affect stuff domestically.
Well, I'm just saying right now. I mentioned in the last few weeks of episodes, we're just talking about the real estate market in general. And it was the slowest I've ever seen in my life there for about a month.
Yeah.
Mainly with the election and everything going on overseas and interest rates, and people are waiting to see if we had a drop in interest rates. I think was a big part of that too.
Yeah.
And then finally, in the last week and a half, I'm starting to see traffic kick back up and start to see properties starting to go into contract again. But it was really depressing there for a little bit.
And then the last 2 weeks, I've gotten the most amount of deals coming in to underwrite than I've had in probably a year. It's finally starting to pick up. I don't think the commercial, you always hear about the commercial real estate loan crisis or whatever. I don't think that's probably it. I think people have balloons coming due. They see interest rates are dropping, and they want to start trying to move stuff to get into different assets that they've been holding for 5-8 years. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think it's fascinating how people can get started at different times. And, real estate is kind of like a business cycle. They say every, 7 years is the completion of a business cycle. But it's so different. There's little flavors that are different each time. In 2008, 9, 10, people generally will say, oh, man, you guys are so lucky you were around back then and you were in real estate. I'd buy everything I could. And it's yeah, man, but, look, you couldn't get financing back then. Mm-hmm. It was banks did not want to loan on real estate. Real estate was not a good asset. It was a toxic asset. And hindsight is always, 2020. Yeah. But do you think if the start of real estate investing, Grant Francke, got picked up and plunked down in 2024, how different or similar do you think your trajectory on real estate investing and buying rentals would be?
I can't answer that really confidently because we went through a really good phase there, 2016 to 2020 of really great stuff. I mean, the numbers are still the same, right? It's all numbers. It's just different zeros and commas in different spots. So I don't see it being that much different. There's still deals out there. You still can find off-market deals. On-the-market deals are about the same as they always are. You're going to get a 6 cap or maybe find a 7 cap and get lucky.
I feel like the MLS has been really good actually this year.
Oh, really?
There's opportunities on there right now.
Okay.
I bought a duplex center and it was bought it for $150. Needed about $40,000 work. Pre-priced at $310.
Oh, nice.
I mean, there's deals out there right now.
Yeah.
And people are way more negotiable now than they ever have been.
Yeah, I think they went through a phase there of the last 2 years where I want 2 years ago price.
I agree.
Well, we don't have 2 years ago interest rates.
And those properties are sitting.
Yeah, and we don't have 2 years ago interest or insurance property or insurance costs.
Yeah.
That's one seller I was talking to was well, I have appraisal from 2 years ago that was $2 million. I'm well, I would love to have the interest rates from 2 years ago and the insurance from 2 years ago, but we're in a different environment now. So I think people are starting to come to the realization that that's the environment we're in now.
Yeah, that is an interesting point that you bring up though, right there, because you may have somebody that's look, 2 years ago this was the value of the property, and this just illustrates the power or the fact that leverage cuts both ways. Mm-hmm. You could put debt on it, and don't overlook debt as a huge component of this too, because the interest rate environment is going to dictate how much cash flow you have, what your NOI is, and all that. So yeah, I think it's admirable that you have leveraged your rental properties without having to delve into the dirty world of flipping.
Yeah.
How have you done that? So you've recycled cash a whole bunch of times, and if you could, what does your portfolio look like right now?
Yeah, so currently we have 100 units. We'll close on another 17 in a couple weeks in Lincoln.
Mostly small multifamily? Small
multifamily, yeah. Majority dupplexes. We have 5 single-family houses, and then the rest are duplexes, fourplexes, 8, 10-unit type of properties.
Yep.
A lot of sixplexes. In Seward, we have mainly sixplexes up there. But so that's our portfolio currently. And then in the beginning, we were just recycling cash, and we still are. I'm not pulling a whole lot of money out of the company to pay myself or my family. We're putting that right back into the properties. We're putting it back into the account to buy more stuff. So still trying to keep that snowball going of growing the portfolio. And that kind of goes back to what right before I left the railroad of kind of lowering our life expenses. Mm-hmm. So we're able to kind of readjust everything and take a step down so we can keep growing this portfolio for the long term, while my wife's W-2 income still does the house payments and all for our personal life.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that I could do what you have done with that, which is just continuously buy rentals because I've always had to layer on transactional stuff. So flipping houses, wholesaling, that kind of thing, because like I'd just run out of money. But I think that's a difference in spending habits too. Like I've always been a kind of a make more money type of a guy than like, oh, let's really buckle down and save as much as we can. And they're both good.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Yours is probably better than mine.
Well, I don't know.
Managing expenses is more, doable, I think, than going out and making more money.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, it's not like we're eating ramen noodles. You know what
Sure,
I mean? Like
yeah.
we still go on trips and stuff, but we just kind of keep things in line of where we want to be.
But if you're not pulling money out of the business consistently and you're keeping it all in there, I feel it's a lot easier.
Yeah, it just grows.
I mean, everybody we ever talked to that's just recycling their money and not touching it is super successful and have the cash flow and money, especially if they're taking the money and then down paying properties off at the end of each year too.
Yeah, and I don't want to overstate what I'm doing. Like I'm a super boring investor. Like extremely, if it doesn't hit my boxes, I'm not taking a risk on this to just get another 2 units in a D-class duplex. Like it's got to meet my buy box and check all the boxes for me to even take a look at it. So
what is your buy box exactly?
So buy box now is in Lincoln, probably going to be the 2 to 10 units is what that's what we're looking at. I'm looking at bigger stuff now to try to bring some partners in for that. But for Laura and I, it's probably going to be that 2 to 10 unit Lincoln in the decent areas.
B class.
B class, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And any other specific rules you have is it has to be B class moving in or no rehabs?
Oh, yeah, we'll take up rehab. So I've kind of done a slow burr, you hear the burr process.
Yeah.
That's the big famous thing. I'll buy a 4-plex that it's going to either cash flow or break even right away. And then as people move out, that's when I'll go in and renovate and then raise rents. So it's nothing that is a super fast time frame where I have a hard money loan on it at 20% that I need to get out of.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's super 25%. What's a good rate at now?
No, that we're at 19.
You have one? Oh,
yeah.
19. Yeah. So I'm doing super slow stuff that it's just low stress. As they move out, all right, we'll renovate it, raise the rents up by $200-$300, and we get cash flow from that one. Then as people move out, we just continue that process.
And now you still self-manage, correct? Or is your wife involved in that, or is it all it's you and
me and a VA? So I've got a VA from the Philippines. Kay, she does. We brought her on about 1.5 years ago. And that was probably about a half a year too late, but she's been phenomenal. So
that's your who, not how, huh?
Yes, absolutely. So that's what after I read that book, I was like, I need somebody to help, because I was getting to the point where I wasn't underwriting deals or taking down properties because I didn't want to manage anymore. Mm-hmm. So once she came on, then I'm like, I could double my portfolio today and probably not feel a whole lot of stress from the management side just because she's got the processes and the systems down.
Let's talk portfolio size. So when you hit, at what point did you say, something's got to give here, I need some help? And you started looking into options, and it sounds like you landed on a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
At what point do you think that's the right time?
Yeah. For me, I brought her on when we had 90 doors.
Okay.
I probably would have done 70, 75 would have been good.
Yeah.
I was getting pretty burnt out there at that 75 to 90 frame. So she's, like I said, she's a VA. She's in the Philippines. So she just does anything that deals with tenant communications. So leasing, maintenance, listings, all that stuff. She does all that. And then in each town, we have a handyman or plumbers and HVAC people that then if we get maintenance stuff, she'll get that stuff and then get it to those people to get the issues taken care of.
I've always looked at hiring in general as a heavy lift on the front end to save you way more time on the back end.
Yep.
And I think that's the big hesitation for entrepreneurs and people that are used to doing everything themselves and slugging it out.
Yep.
Is just oh my God, I don't have time to train somebody and blah, blah, blah. Do you have any shortcuts? And I know I'm kind of catching you flat-footed with this question probably, but when you started looking into it and you said, I want somebody to handle X, Y, and Z, how do you figure out what the right thing is for them to take off your plate?
Yeah.
How's that look in practice?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I made the decision to get the VA, I literally just started screen recording what I did every day. So I would go through and my workflows and everything. So I created not only a written SOP, but a video SOP of everything I do for every sort of instance that I could possibly have. Mm-hmm. So I have a library on Google Drive of every different thing that we could do in the process that we do it. So when she came on, like I said, it was a heavy lift in the beginning, and I knew it was going to be like that. So I spent 2 or 3 weeks of recording, and then when she came on, I had 2 or 3 weeks where I created dummy properties in my property management software and would just throw things at her hey, there's a plumbing issue here. What do we do? And to see how she handled it.
Did you ever find yourself accidentally scrolling Facebook for like an hour and a half, and then that was left in there as her training?
No, yeah, that's a
and
good
she's
question.
like, so
Yeah.
you want me to click through these bikini pictures?
Why are you on Twitter?
Or no.
Yeah. What are you doing?
I'm sorry. Anyway, no, I think that is really interesting because it's like a big hurdle on the front end, but it makes your life way easier. How difficult is it to maintain a relationship with a VA and have them, stay motivated to do a good job for you instead of just like, and coasting because they're in the Philippines, you're in the U.S.
Yeah. So I feel like I got super lucky. This is my first VA hire, and she's been like just a rock star. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we have. I learned earlier, like I'm a big text guy. I don't like phone calls or stuff like that. Like,
Same.
But she really enjoys like video conferences. So every Monday we have a video conference. We update each other on what's going on, and then we have a text, thread with each other that we keep each other engaged. But she's just been great. Like she bought in. She even has brought up like good ideas that we've changed. She's like, because she had some hospitality background. So she's like, well, what if we do this instead of it this way? And that was a great idea. So we went with it. And she'll pop in on the weekends, like on her off hours, to check in and see. So I think I got really lucky. But
yeah, sounds like it.
And we just we try to create a good culture, and like I know about our family, and we keep each other updated on what's going on. So it's not so much a digital type of thing. We try to make it more personal, and just be like a good human being. That goes a long way.
Yeah. What's the time difference between here and the Philippines?
It's about 12 hours. Yeah. So she's working overnights there and for days here, which is like when that first started, I was like, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, if I don't do this, I would either maybe have to go to Hong Kong to get a job, or I might have to go on a cruise ship to get a job. So like
that is nuts.
So it's just, and she's making a very good wage for what they make over there. So she's as happy as can be. And I'm flexible too with her. Like she's like, hey, my kid's sick. I'm like, that's fine. Go take care of him. Like I'll pick up today if we have anything going on. It's not a big deal.
If you're going to hire somebody in the U.S. versus the Philippines to do the exact same job, what's the difference in pay?
Oh, 3 times cheaper.
Really?
At least, yeah.
So the Philippines, they're going to be 33% ish of what it would cost somebody to hire somebody in the U.S.
Yeah, I pay her $5 an hour.
Sometimes I think about my VA, and I'm like, I feel like I'm not giving him enough jobs. AKA John listening to this right now. Some weeks I'm like completely on it. And I'm like, he's got his job list and he does it perfect. It always gets done right. But sometimes I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, I've only talked to him once this whole week.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what does he do all the time? Yeah. But everything that was tasked gets done. So how can I complain, right? And then some weeks I know he's just knows I'm on fire because I'm like hitting him up like 3-4 times a day because I got head spinning with ideas. Yeah. And he's like, man, he's wearing me the F out this week. But I wonder, like sometimes I'm like, am I using his services to the fullest?
Yeah, that's when I brought her on. I was like, it's 40 hours a week. I was like, I don't know if I have 40 hours a week for.
I struggle with that too when I brought on a VA.
And so yeah, that's one thing I struggled in the beginning was like, it's 40 hours a week. That's a long time. That's a lot of hours. I didn't know what I would have. And I was talking to other people that had done VAs, and like once you get them, like you're going to find stuff for them. So again, I started creating SOPs of like how to underwrite a deal for me. So my agent knows when she gets numbers or he gets numbers, they email both of us, and then she's able to start inputting some of that data. She'll go out and research what the county taxes are. She'll input the rents and the utilities and all that stuff for me. So then when I get that data from like a underwritten deal, I can take a look at it and go deeper in it, but I already have the basic information from her. So she's always kind of got that stuff going on too.
Do you think you keep them busy for 40 hours a week?
I think so. I think pretty close. I mean, I'm sure she's not like just straight there all the time. She's going to do other stuff. Banging it out for 8 hours straight. But again, like I said, it all gets done. Everything I ask of her gets done. If I can provide her some leeway with her and her family and her life, and she's still benefiting me and my business, then I'm all for it.
My VA told me, he's like, I've been doing this for 10 years. And he goes, this is the best job I've had yet, and which means I don't push him hard enough. Yeah. And he goes, but he goes, if this ends, he goes, I'm done being a VA, because he said the hours difference.
Yeah.
He goes,
that would suck.
He says it's affecting his health.
I'm sure.
And I straight up asked him, I'm like, dude, if you feel like you need to be done with this, please tell me now.
Yeah.
And then let's find something so you can live your best life.
Ted, how much customer facing duties does he have?
He now answers all the phone calls that come in. So we have a phone line set up for Omaha REIA. And so every phone call comes in, he answers.
So that's quite a bit, right? Well, how many calls do you think that is a week?
I have zero idea. I've never asked that question, and then I should ask that. And then on the other side, though, his job is to reach out to sponsors, each sponsor every 2 weeks, via email or phone call, and then any new members or follow-ups with members that left to see why they left us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he's on the phone quite a bit. And every time I have a Zoom call, I actually have him on there also in the background.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hey, Grant, one thing that I always have a lot of fun talking about is crazy investment stories. And it can be anything from like dead bodies to drug raids to frozen pipes. Do you have any crazy fun stories that our audience would love to hear?
Yeah, I have crazy. I don't know if it's fun or not, but
it's never fun in the end.
And the police wasn't involved, but so we had a tenant that in a building of ours, it was during COVID, so they had a really long Christmas break. She left at the beginning of December and came back the end of January. Didn't tell us. It's in our lease to let us know that if you're leaving for more than a couple weeks, we now check on college students now for this reason. But she left, and she was in the bottom unit of a sixplex, so there was 2 apartments above her. There was a blockage in the sewer part, not sewer, but the main stack of the apartment. So for 2 months, everything that the tenants above her, the 2 apartments above her, put down their sink, from dishwasher, garbage disposal, washing dishes, came out of her sink into her apartment. So we had to replace about 5 foot of drywall all the way around the apartment, new cabinets, new flooring, obviously, new appliances. Was
it the only bottom unit?
Yeah, well, no, there's 2 bottom units. So there was another one across, and then this one. And we asked the other people, like, hey, did you smell anything? Like, yeah, I just thought she was just cooking different types of foods. I'm like, well, it's not the type of food I would eat, but it smelled pretty ranky in there.
So just in general, do you have the same procedure, Owen?
What?
If somebody's going to leave for a period of time?
I have it written in my lease that I should be notified, or that management or I should be notified if there's an absence, or like they go on a trip for I think it's 10 days or 2 weeks. I can't remember.
So what's the process then? Like what actions are you guys going to take?
So now the VA knows. We know who's college students, especially in Seward, like with Concordia. So we know who are college students. So we reach out to them proactively around Thanksgiving. Like, hey, what's your plans for Thanksgiving? Then what's your plans for Christmas break, so we can know if somebody's going to be gone. Then we have somebody in the unit every week just peep in their head and make sure everything's okay.
And so then it comes down to the management to actually do their job, which in your case, it's you.
It's us, yeah. So, yeah, and my partner in Seward that helped me deal with this, we know what kind of a headache that was, so we will not let that happen again.
Interesting.
Were you able to recover any of those out-of-pocket expenses through an insurance claim?
We were, because...
really?
Yeah, so the insurance would not have covered it if it came back through the main stack sewer part. But because there was a block within the building, it was considered as a flood on the building, so insurance was able to cover it.
Ooh, we got lucky.
That was 2020. I don't think that would probably happen now with the way insurance is. I think they would probably fight that because insurance sucks right now. So, but through that, at that time, we were able to get it covered.
I'm going to go on record saying I think insurance policies are total bullshit, because nobody reads them. Nobody is going to read an entire insurance policy. I mean, they're over 100 pages by the time you get the full thing. Nobody reads those. And I think it's total BS that they don't call out, like, here are the commonly known gotchas for property owners. Do you want this rider, or do you want to opt for this coverage or not? Yep. And they don't do that ever. At least in my experience. I don't know about you, Ted, but like nobody ever asks me those things. Like, hey, if something backs up and it's between the walls, you're covered. But what about outside the street? Yep. Like that happens all the time. And I got a claim denied because of that.
Yep.
I was talking to Ben Cat recently because I remember him speaking at a meetup, and he's like, I think he's over 1,000 units in different types of asset classes. And he was talking about self-managing or self-insuring. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so I followed up with him last time I saw him. I'm like, hey, where are you with that self-insurance? How is that working out for you? And he's like, we're just not there yet unit-wise. He goes, but we're really close. So I'm wondering what number it takes to be able to say, I'm going to self-insurance and take the money I would pay for insurance and put it into a savings account to cover losses.
Yeah.
Well, I think the point becomes how many you get paid off. Because like if you don't have it paid off, they're not going to. You can't not have insurance on a property if you have debt on it.
Yeah,
right?
bank's not going to go for that.
So it's. I mean, you're probably going to be pretty old or pretty long into your real estate career by the time you have your whole portfolio self-insured. But I mean, it's a good question. It's just hard to put into practice, and there's so many freaking like little loopholes and gotchas. It's like deny, you know, with insurance companies.
Can you just become your own insurance company and then self-insure that way?
Well, sure, yeah, but then you got like regulations up the ass.
Yeah.
You know, like you got to. There's so much to it. So I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like right now, like when I'm underwriting deals, like that's the biggest thing that's killing deals for me right now is insurance. It's just the premiums are crazy, and like I use American. You said you were with American Family. I've used them, and they've been great. Like, but they're starting I think October or November 1st. They're not underwriting investment property anymore. So like you have to go to a broker. Or you have to go to something else to get that.
I use Marty McGuire at Blackstone Insurance. He's about 60% all commercial now.
Yeah.
He's been really good for me. And he actually just got all my prices down.
Oh.
He shot everything. I'm like, what?
Everything need to get his contact.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So what do you think, now that you've kind of been through the run-up, the stagnation, and are you in a point in your investing career where you still want to step on the gas and like scale up and all that, or are you kind of good, or is it a little bit of both?
So I think it varies day to day by who I talk to. It's
how motivating they are,
right? Yeah. Like I get around some of those mastermind groups and they're all like syndicating infills for ADUs. I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's do. But then I get home and I'm like, my life is really good the way it is. I don't need to add the extra stress of that. I'm just going to keep, so that's where I keep landing on, I'm just going to take down boring deals that are cash flowing and just slowly build my portfolio. Like I don't need to have 13,000 units. Like I never thought I would have 100 and I'm just grateful I have what I have. I don't have aspirations to be that huge person. If I can help people along the way and learn how to teach them how to do it, provide a good life for my family, and enjoy the time I have here on Earth, then I'm good with that.
So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Great question. Well, my kids would be 21 and 18, so hopefully they're having just a fantastic, they're just great human beings.
So our kids are about the same age.
Yeah. So hopefully they're just killing it in life. And my portfolio is steadily growing. You know, I don't ever have
21 and 18. They're going to be having a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and they're not,
hopefully not too much
They're going
fun.
to be killing something.
Yeah. Their dad was a boring guy at that age, so hopefully they're like me and not like their mom. But
that's what Owen always thinks.
Yeah. So I don't have like a number thing that I want to get to, like a number of units, and I've never had like I want to get to this many units. But it's just if I can steadily keep buying boring cash flowing properties, then I'm going to be good.
Awesome. Hey, one thing that I've in my awesome research I've been doing is you consistently mention doing these letters, and I know a lot of people do postcards and whatnot, and they're spamming out to 10,000 people and see where it hit. But you have a different take on reaching out to clients and or potential sellers.
Yep.
And what is your recipe, and what kind of success rate are you seeing out of it?
Yeah. So I send out probably like 20 or 30 letters a quarter. Just to targeted people in
very personal messages.
Very personal messages in certain areas with certain properties that I want. So I try to build a relationship with those people. That's kind of the way I built my portfolios, through relationships. So my letters they're very basic. Hey, my name's Grant Francke. I'm interested at your property at this. And no offense to you guys, I'm not a broker. I'm not an agent. I'm not trying to get a listing or anything, but I'm just an investor trying to make a deal with somebody to work something out. So I try to make it very disarming. I include a picture of my family on it just to kind of bring down the barrier a little bit.
In front of the Husker Stadium? And
No, it's just actually in front of it's in front of a cornfield at my house. So it's like a very Nebraska family picture. But I've had fairly good luck with them. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like a 50% hit rate, but I've had good luck in growing my portfolio that way of just building relationships with people.
I probably up until I think fairly recently, I don't think I had ever bought a deal that was not value add. And almost every single multifamily asset that I own right now, with the exception of a couple that I bought with partners.
Or under construction.
Right. But with the exception of a small handful I bought from direct mail. It works. And it's time tested, and it is a long play.
Yeah.
Because it's all timing related, right?
You just got to hit it at the right time.
I was sitting there thinking when I was listening to you talk about your approach was sending those targeted ones. So you're basically vetting. You live in the Lincoln, Nebraska market, which they have a population of what during non-Husker games?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, so like small to mid-sized town. Small to mid-sized city. Let's call it that. It's the county seat of Nebraska, state capital. Go Huskers. It's one of those things where if you're looking to really ramp up and buy everything, it's going to be probably a little bit difficult to do because the town doesn't have enough population to have that many multifamily units, right? But I think I like your approach of kind of the slow drip and the targeted approach as opposed to just shotgunning out a whole bunch of mailers. And I'm looking at this through the lens of somebody that owns multifamily assets and that I have sold to people over time. What I want to know with whoever I'm going to be talking to that is interested in buying something from me is, are you going to close? Are you going to perform? Or are you just somebody that's going to try and get it under contract and then retrade on it and tell me you want a whole bunch of repairs done? Or even worse, are you not actually planning on buying it? Or are you just going to try and wholesale it and do something like that? So I want to know who I'm connecting with is an actual end buyer. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, what would prove that to me as a seller? And it would prove it to me if you said, I own, and I heard you say this on another podcast, I own 123 Main Street, or I own XYZ property. And that would give me a good example as a seller that I can see based on your correspondence. Maybe I'm not going to call you right now. Maybe I'm not going to. Maybe I am. It's all timing. Maybe I'm going to hang on to your letter I'm like, all right, this dude actually owns some stuff in this neighborhood. He knows it. I'm going to call him when it's time to sell. And that way I can save some money on broker commissions. Because like when you go to sell a multifamily asset, and I'm selling one right now, that's 20 units. I have it listed for 1.795. So I'm going to, like, if you called it 5%, I don't even know what that equals out to, but it's going to be, let's call it, I don't know, $70,000. That's a lot of money. Like, that's a lot of my money out of my pocket that I'm going to have to pay a broker for that. So if I can have the opportunity to sell it to somebody or give you the opportunity to buy it, I want to know you can perform. And so you giving an example of, like, here's what I own right now, here's what my portfolio looks like, that would give me a lot of credibility. And I'm just saying that as somebody that could be the recipient of one of your letters. So I like that approach, and I like the slow drip and targeted approach as opposed to like, hey, I want to buy your property at 123 Main Street, and then there's something in there that's like, I can tell you totally shotgun this out to everybody.
The amount of responses I've gotten that I've bought is small, but the amount of responses I've gotten that I've went to coffee with the guy or the girl or the couple, like, that's huge. And I may not ever buy a property from them, but I may just send that letter and having coffee with that person, I may pick up something from them. Or they may know somebody who is going to sell something, and they're like, hey, I just had coffee with this kid that's looking to buy stuff. So
I think our letter looks something like, hey, I see that you have a ton of properties, and you seem like somebody you'd be interesting to talk to. Maybe I can have you on a REIA Radio podcast, and then we can discuss some of the properties you want to sell.
Oh, this explains that marketing spend line item that I've seen in REIA Radio's budget. No, I'm kidding. We have no budget. It's all expensive. But no, I wanted to call that out because I've been on both sides of this. I bought almost all of my multifamily stuff through direct mail in exactly the fashion that you're talking about. But I also receive them all the time, and I at times do want to sell. But I also want to know as a seller that you're going to be able to buy this, and you're not some poser that's like read books and that's it. You know what I mean?
Going to cancel on you 3 days before the closing. 2 times.
Yeah, or trying pull some bullshit at the last minute where they're trying to retrade on everything, or be like, hey, I want you to do this $100,000 roof replacement on the whole thing or whatever it is, you know? Like, I want you to perform. Do what you say you're going to do. Like, give me some certainty out of this, and I'll give you a haircut on price.
I tell you what, I've had small apartment buildings sold twice, canceled on day before closing, canceled on 3 days before closing. And each time, you know, there's an investment into that.
Yeah.
You know, either I did a whole bunch of repair items, or, you know, like the first time I probably put about $10,000 into repair items. And then the second time, it wasn't just that. It was just the fact that they wanted training on how to run Airbnbs. And so I did the training programs and everything, spent my time, blocked off my schedule, then blocked off all future bookings.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, and then get the cold feet. I'm like, oh, my gosh, people, just commit and move forward.
Yeah. Take action. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I love it.
Sorry, that's my vent. Hey, one thing that I really want to touch base before we conclude today is it seems like your why and everything is family. Am I wrong or right?
100%. Yeah.
And you got 2 young kids, sounds like possibly 8 and 11.
Yep.
And you left railroad because of this, which you and I I never worked in a railroad, but we have very same story. Nope, never did.
Is this the only industry you've never worked in?
Maybe. And so, but with that, you know, I left because of family and family time, because I was traveling 4-state territory, wasn't getting to see the family, so I get it.
Yeah.
But how do you make time for the family? What's your work-life, family-life balance look like today?
Yeah. Family is the most important. Like, I can underwrite a deal tomorrow, or if my son wants to play basketball or shoot hoops, I'm going to do that. Like, or if I'm going to underwrite a deal or go to my daughter's volleyball game, I'm going to do that 100 times over underwriting a deal. Like, it's the most important thing, and it's my why. It's the reason. It's my guiding principle of what I do. That's why I don't flip $100 million mansions. That's why I don't take risk on a property that might not make sense, because I know, like, I'm not doing this to add stress to my life. I'm doing this to be a better dad, be a better husband, be a better person for my community. So it guides everything I do in my life.
And I need to re-guide myself, because I make specific time for my family. You know, I know that end of day time is them, or like I just did a trip yesterday to Lawrence and Gardens with the you know, we're chaperoning a trip, and I want to be able to never say no to those situations. And the only time I've ever said no to anything is because I was hosting a REIA meetup. Yeah. You know, but that's once a month.
Right.
And you know, I think it's really important to have your set rules, your time, and you know, and make that your why in life. I mean, we all don't have kids that are listening, but maybe you do have somebody that's special to you that you want to make those times, or maybe you're an uncle or an aunt, and giving some time to those people are important too. So,
and just knowing like why you're doing what you're doing has been just so huge for me. Like, because that can keep you motivated too. Like when times, because we all know like things are going to happen, things are going to break, things are going to go bad, contracts are going to go bad. But if you know why you're doing it, it just makes the whole process a whole lot easier.
Well, it's about the time to get into the OT with Owen and Ted. You are in the OT with Owen and Ted, presented by Timber Creek Virtual.
At Timber Creek Virtual, we don't just keep your business running. We take it to the next level. Our virtual and executive assistants handle all the everyday tasks so you can focus on what really matters, growing your business. Need clarity on your financial performance? Our expert bookkeeping services keep everything organized, so you always know where your business stands. With our seamless transaction coordination, you never have to worry about the details. Just close the deal. We've got you covered with cutting-edge digital marketing, proactive lead generation, and expert acquisition management. Plus, we handle the cold calling and messaging too. Let us handle the big C part so you can handle your business. Visit timbercreekvirtual.com/services and see how we can make your business soar.
We cover the same 6, possibly 7.
Handful of questions
that we ask every guest. And
sometimes we throw a new one in there, just so you know. So
Perfect.
So be on your toes,
I'm ready.
Grant.
Yep.
All right. First question for you. And this is a softball, because we haven't really spent any time on this, and we should have.
Yes.
What is the title of your first book?
Oh, yeah.
And what's it about?
Yeah. My first book is The Unlikely Investor, A Path to Financial Freedom Through Real Estate. So I wrote a book this year. I started in around December, and then it got published in end of June. It's about just kind of my story, leaving my W-2 with some different tips and tricks in there of like how I did it and like some of the other things I did. The first half of it's like, so when I was writing it, I thought I would really love writing about the nuts and bolts. Like this is cash flow and this is cash on cash return. But while I was writing it, I really came to appreciate the mindset shift that I took, like going back to the Rich Dad Poor Dad, of like my why. And so like a big portion of the book is on your why, goal setting, those sort of things. So the first part of it's about that. Then we go into the nuts and bolts of the real estate investing, cash on cash, finding a deal, funding it. And then the back part is about just managing, kind of like a small self-managing thing. Just some tips and tricks on that too.
Is this on Audible also?
On Audible, Amazon as well.
Did you read it yourself?
I did not.
Okay.
I read the first chapter and then I listened to it and I was like, no,
I'm
gonna have somebody else read that for me.
So you actually had somebody took the book on and published it.
Yep. Well, it's self-published.
Okay,
so you just upload it to Amazon and then they publish it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
How do you go about finding the person that's going to do the voiceover on the? Is it you just put it out there on Fiverr?
Yeah, so you search on Fiverr and they give
Is
you
that
a bunch,
what happened?
Yeah, you put a bunch of examples out and then they read a little bit for you and you're like, all right, I like this guy.
How much does that cost?
Probably $2,000, I think,
Really?
to have somebody read it. Yeah.
I want to read a book sometime.
Read?
Yeah, I want to read it.
Yeah, but I think both of you guys would be good. My voice is not a reading voice.
Oh, I thought you meant you wanted to read.
No,
a book.
I want to
read
be-
a book for the first time.
Yeah.
That
too.
would be great.
No,
Good for you, buddy.
I want to get paid $2,000 to read a book.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. I wouldn't mind doing a voice.
Who knows if he'd pick us on those samples though?
Yeah, that's true. But
I'll have you guys do my next book.
What-
You guys can split
Yes!
it up. Yes.
There we
Can
go.
we compete?
Yes. You guys both have to read it, and then I get to pick who's the winner.
And I'll do it for $1,000.
Oh,
No.
perfect. He wins.
Hey, you know what? I'll do it for 3,000.
Nope. He still wins.
We'll see. I mean, Tiffany edges out, what Casio over time. I think when you look at net profit. So I'm just saying quality over quantity.
We'll do a test. We'll see what happens.
Okay,
We'll
we'll
do a
split
test.
test this. But no, I really liked the in the book. You broke down basically all the stuff you need to know when you're looking at real estate investing. And I thought it was a really, really good. And I don't know if this was your intent, but it seemed like it was a gift to somebody that is evaluating whether real estate investing is something they could use to get out of their W-2 job.
Yeah. And
That seemed like that was the takeaway I had. It was
Yeah.
like you gave them an instruction booklet and said, here is the summary of all the facets of that you need to know, and here's some more things you need to look into.
yeah,
Is
and
that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I went into it with that reasoning. Like I just went into it as just like I was going to write a book, just as a goal, just to write a book. But just looking back on my experience of like maybe wanting to be a teacher, and then at the railroad I was like a conductor trainer, so I like trained the new conductors. And then once I got to this phase, I was like, I really enjoy helping people that are just starting out and like just don't have any idea what's going on. And like, so I wrote it in that aspect of like, what would I have wanted to read when I was just starting? I had Rich Dad Poor Dad, I had all of Brandon Turner's books and Bigger Pockets podcast. So I just tried to condense everything that I had in my experience and put it in a book.
With the book, how much money did you invest into that whole process, and how much have you gotten out of it?
Yeah, it's not cash on cash is not a great
Yeah.
return on that
So
one.
it's kind of like REIA Radio.
But it's done a lot for you marketing wise.
Absolutely. I mean, I've met people like, so Brandon Turner wrote the forward for it. So I've got to know Brandon Turner very well. And like, I've just gotten,
How do you get that to happen?
so I met him at a conference. So I'd been emailing him.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, would you look at my book and just give an endorsement, or would you like maybe write me a forward? Like that would be crazy if you would write me a forward. So I'd been emailing him and he hadn't responded. And then we were at a conference in Denver and I was sitting there at a table with some people and I had just got my author copy, and Brandon Turner was at the conference and he walked by the table and he saw my book cover because I had included that. He's like, hey, you're the guy that's writing a book and wanted me to write a forward. I was like, yeah, that's me. And so he sat down and looked at it and he's like, yeah, here's my information. Get a hold of me and I'll write the forward for you.
Here's my legit email.
Legit email and my legit phone number. Like, holy smokes, this is crazy. So just like having that happen, but cash on cash. I mean, it's not a money making thing. I've sold like 300 some copies. So
301 today.
300, perfect. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Saying, I don't know where you're at, Ted, but
I've got a copy in my truck if you want it. That's fine.
He's waiting for the free.
Autograph
he doesn't want to
copy.
pay movie theater prices.
Yeah.
He's waiting for streaming.
Yeah.
Damn it.
You know, one thing we could do, you could sign it to the REIA group.
Okay.
And then
giveaway.
and we'll make it a giveaway and do a big announcement about it next time.
Love it.
We have a really good book author actually speaking next month.
Perfect. But yeah, it's just getting in and meeting people. And like this last deal that I did, I had more people that would probably be interested in investing with us that probably maybe wouldn't have beforehand. Not close friends and family, but like people that are like one step up from that. That are like, okay, well, they read my book or they know more about what I'm doing, so they feel more comfortable with it.
This is kind of a leap, but I would love to see the results of you at this decision point that you have between going into bed with somebody that has a whole shitload of money that they want to invest in your projects, and then going down that route of either JV or syndication or whatever. And then the split test would be like on the other half of that, we see Grant Francke going through and doing what you've done already, which is basically eating your own cooking, buying, rehabbing, rent, refinance, repeat, and then what your portfolio would look like and how happy with everything you would be after 10 years.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a fascinating?
I'd be way more happy over here with just eating my own cooking.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Like the longer I've been doing this and like I've experimented with a lot of different stuff, I'm leaning that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on the Grant Francke podcast.
Ted likes eating cooking also.
And you can interview anyone in the world today. Who is it, and what's one question you like to ask?
If it's real estate wise,
it doesn't have to be.
I would probably still go this route because I haven't met this guy, and I do look up to him. But like Ken McElroy is somebody that I've learned a lot from, and I feel like he's like, you can tell even on social media it's all BS, right? But you can tell when somebody's like a decent person and is doing things right, and I think Ken's one of those guys.
We feel that way about Brandon Turner.
Oh yeah, Brandon Turner's just like he's a solid dude,
genuine in person.
Yeah, he's just a good human being, and I think Ken's in that same realm. You know what I mean? So I would probably interview Ken and just ask, I don't know, some sort of fluffy question I would think about of like how do I scale my portfolio, but yeah, if it was real estate, it'd probably be Ken. Personal wise, I'd probably like interview Dave Matthews. I'm a big Dave Matthews fan.
I'm a big Dave Matthews fan.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Yes. Heck yeah. Everybody always makes fun of me for this.
I've been to, I got to check my app, but I think I've been to like 17 shows now.
25.
Yeah.
Been to 25.
Got me.
Yeah, awesome. That's awesome. Good to know. But yeah, so I'd probably interview Dave and just ask him like some fanboy quote, like Chris Farley on SNL, like, so what do you think about this song?
Except, Dave, you'd have to get really stoned with him to get him to talk nice and smooth.
Sounds good to me. Sounds like a great time to me. Yeah, I would be down for that, 100%.
I used to have these little coasters, and they were little Dave Matthews rugs. If you ever been to one of the shows, he's got these like rugs on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had these little Dave Matthews rugs coasters.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So if we're doing real estate, Ken McElroy, and then if we're doing like just personal life, Dave Matthews.
I gotta hack my system to see if I can get Dave Matthews' cell phone number and call him and get him on.
That would be great. I would sit in that chair for you if you need me to.
All right. This is a weird transition, but who would you choose to deliver your eulogy, and what do you think they're going to say about you?
Dave Matthews. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, you know what? There's been other celebrity choices.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. I'd probably like if we're going in the future, if I'm going to die in 40 years, I'm going to pick my son Brendan, and I hope he would say that I was a good dad, and above that, just like a good human, a good person that did what I thought was right. And just had a good character, and provided him motivation of like who he wanted to be when he grew up.
Obviously, if I didn't live too long, if I died in the next 15 years, 20 years,
Ted and I have a $10,000 bet.
I probably would have Owen here do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh man, I would put a lot of Chat GPT on that.
Yeah, you got to make it really funny and fun though.
I would.
Okay, good.
I think I would actually have okay, if I was just gonna have some, I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about narrating or like on the Audible thing.
Yeah.
How awesome would it be to have Samuel L. Jackson or Snoop Dogg or
Morgan Freeman? I think
Morgan Freeman would be great. I was also going to say James Earl Jones.
Yeah, but there's
R.I.P.
Yeah, but nowadays you can read the whole thing, and then there's a AI app that can put it in any voice you want with video.
That's great. So I'm gonna write my eulogy, and then I'll have
somebody
somebody else write it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll be a hologram by then.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you guys! This is a Kickstarter business.
Let's do it.
Eulogy.com. I just downloaded it. Listeners, don't try and sandbag us on this. I think we should get this going.
Okay.
Eulogy.com.
Okay, and then with a hologram-based system.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
Like
AI,
like Leia, Princess Leia in Star Wars.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of people will probably use her. No, like use her to do the eulogy because they're Star Wars fans.
Right, uh-huh.
Your mind went to the wrong place.
No,
we
said it.
We are going long. You got to wrap this up. I am sorry, Grant, that you have to deal with this guy.
No, it's all good.
The more old fashions he has, this is what we get here. But if you look at your life in whole, and it can either be personal or business, what mentor has had the biggest impact on you to make you the person you are now with either personal or business side of life?
Okay, so it's not really a mentor. I'm gonna say somebody who's had the biggest impact on my life, and she has mentored me somewhat, but it's gonna be my wife. And if it wasn't for Laura, I would still be on the railroad. And there's no offense to my guys that are on the railroad listening to this. I love you guys. It's a great job. But if
honk your horn twice when you listen to us, guys.
Yeah. But I mean, if it wasn't for her, like mentoring me and helping me stay focused on what we're doing, I wouldn't be where I am. So it's maybe a sappy answer or whatever, but
yeah, get a room.
Yeah, right.
Jeez.
But I mean, I literally would not be where I am without her. So.
I can't give Jessica that credit.
I'm going to abstain from answering this. All right, last question for you, Grant.
Grant's like, what?
How?
I can't believe you just said that.
Let's get another old fashioned.
Okay, being the huge social media influencer that you are,
gross.
What's the best way? Like, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, "That dude sounds like what I want to do." Like, what's the best way to connect with you, or do you even want that?
But not in a Princess Leia way.
Yeah, not in a Princess Leia way, hologram way. So if you're going to connect with me, Instagram's going to be the best way. Grant.Francke, Francke. I try to post somewhat often. I do stories. It's mainly of my kids and just like living life.
But honestly, though, if you really want to get more information on Grant, because I was doing my research on him, and you just type his name in the podcast. You've been on a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, I've been on him, like Bigger Pockets, and
what episode was that?
Like 998 or something like that.
998 or 996.
Yeah, right around there.
Yeah, and then I've been on I just did Real Wealth the other day, and then I'll be on Brandon Turner's coming up. That should be coming out in a couple weeks.
And then you were on the Best Ever.
Best Ever, yeah. So any of those things, and those are all on YouTube too. But if you want to connect with me, Instagram's going to be the best way to do it.
Hey, off topic.
Buy my book.
Buy his book.
Yep.
How do you get on podcasts?
It's not as easy as I thought it'd be. It's a lot of requesting, sending emails. Most of them have submission forms on their websites, and you do that. So I've just been doing that. And then I met Kathy at Rich and Kathy Fetke at Limitless in Dallas. So I got talking to them, and then that's how I got on their podcast.
You know, Owen here is like, we've mentioned this a million times, but he was like one of the first contributors to Bigger Pockets.
Okay.
He has 1,000 posts on their forums, and he still hasn't been on.
I'm gonna get you on Bigger Pockets.
And we personally interviewed Brandon in his house.
Yeah.
And still didn't get the invite.
Yeah,
I'll get you on there.
Face for radio. Well, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
I am so glad I got to meet you. I was really bummed that I couldn't make the meetup that you spoke at. So that was really cool.
Grant, thank you for coming. I heard you speak at a local meetup group and loved your story. Had no idea that you were on all the national podcasts. After you talked, I did this research on you, found out that you're a podcast hooker, and so reached out to you. You're super cool, and I knew that you had a good story, and I love that it's just like all comes from the heart, I feel like, and you have a strong why, and that's kind of what we seek for here at REIA Radio. So thank you so much for taking the time to come out here. And with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of REIA Radio, Aiden Bear, and Ted Kosh, I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to Grant, Boring Financial Freedom, Francke.
Sign off.
Love it. He gave me this question earlier, and I still don't have a great answer for it.
It can just be somebody you've always looked up to.
Yeah.
Jory, go ahead and play the Jeopardy tune.
Yeah, Jeopardy tune here. So for this, radio edit.
What are you doing with your hand there?
Nothing. Just stretching.
Okay.
It's a gang sign. Don't worry about it. Don't ask questions you don't know the answer to.
Radio edit. All that happened.
Or not.